Did you think your song and dance and your superstition would help you, Eli? I am the third revelation. We're brothers! We're brothers! I'm finished.
I've traveled all over podcast land to be here tonight. I couldn't get away sooner because one of the previous 129 episodes was coming out and I had to see about it. Now, whatever the other film podcast promised to do, I assure you that when it comes to the showdown, they won't be there.
Welcome, everyone, back to another edition of Let's Take 5, the podcast where we take a cinema legend and discuss their excellence and range. My name is Eric Martindale.
My name is Austin Luger.
And today, we are on our final film. Not just final film of a 5, but a final film of the entire Let's Take 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You've heard it. You've heard it here. If you've been listening to the previous episodes, you heard us mentioning earlier. We are doing the Let's Take 10, Let's Take 5's Let's Take 10 wrap up, which is 5 films from me, 5 films from Austin. We combine in a final 10 list to wrap this show up. 10 films that we didn't want to do the show without. And I'm going to read through them. Austin probably doesn't want me to do this, but I'm going to read through them. First film we covered in this 10 was Casablanca, then Rear Window, then 12 Angry Men, then Seventh Seal, then The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, then Amadeus, then Die Hard, then The Last Temptation of Christ, then The Royal Tenenbaums, and now, finally, There Will Be Blood, which will be the final film that we cover on this podcast in episode 130. This film is I'm going to say this, the legendary film. The 2007 should have been Best Picture winner. But that was a pretty tough year.
It was
for
a big
films.
year.
That was a big year. You had Atonement that year. You had No Country for Old Men that year. Very, very, very big year in film. And it's loosely based on the Upton Sinclair novel Oil. Paul Thomas Anderson worked on this film, the legend goes, as sort of a writing project to sort of get back into writing, and he wanted to try adapting something. He read Oil, like the book, and he adapted it into There Will Be Blood. The adaptation really gets really loosely based because the ending of the film is completely different, but this is the famous Daniel Plainview, portrayed by Daniel Day-Lewis, who won the Oscar for this film, and what is, to me at least, in the pantheon of the great character studies of all time, Citizen Kane, Raging Bull, where the movie, if you remove Orson Welles' Kane from Citizen Kane, you remove Jake LaMotta, Raging Bull, Robert De Niro from that movie, if you remove Daniel Plainview from this film, and you cast someone else, it just falls apart. And it's a story about faith, greed, redemption, and perdition. About an oil man who finds oil in the middle of a town, takes over the town, sort of annexes the entire town based on lies. And the antagonist of the film is the man of God that lives in the town, played wonderfully by Paul Dano. Another character, I don't know if anyone else could play this role. He's like that, he strikes that perfect balance between, there's like heat against a character, like I really don't like that character, and then there's good heat. He has good heat. I love not liking that character, right? So, and I guess they kind of both play out the same way. Austin, There Will Be Blood, a film that probably, especially in film podcast circles, doesn't need much of an introduction, although this has been a very long one. What do you think about There Will Be Blood?
It's incredible. It's just truly such a remarkable movie that just keeps getting richer with age. Because like examining the character of Daniel Plainview, like obviously the performance as brilliantly portrayed by you at the beginning of this episode.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Eli.
Again, you had the performance that's so much fun, right? He has the voice, he has the charisma, he has the power behind the words, but also like the character is just so hard to pin down. Because they could have gone a very boring thing of like, okay, he's a sociopath, he just wants money, blah, blah, blah. But he reminded me so much of like a character from like Mad Men, right? Where like...
Another great character study.
Exactly, yeah. And like all those characters, whenever I watched an episode of Mad Men, I was blown away by the fact that like they said a line, I didn't predict them saying that line, but once they said it, it was so true to that character. Like it just always feels so real and lived in. So when things happen in this movie, like him abandoning his son on the train, there's not a very like... It's not a super overly structured movie where it goes, oh, because of this scene, and this scene, that's why he did this. There's so much more to interpret years later that like nothing is false, nothing rings like bullshit, but it is something that like I watched it again going like, fuck, why did he leave his son at this moment?
Well, this character is driven by greed and hate. These are the things that occupy his mind at all times. Each coin that he puts in his pocket that takes a coin away from someone else is a victory against humanity, which he despises. It's hard to nail exactly, at least in my mind, hard to nail down what the actual thesis of the film is. It's more of an adventure in trying to understand why Daniel makes each decision that he makes, particularly all the decisions leading up to the point where HW gets blown up by the well and goes deaf. From there, the movie turns on its head. I mean, he's a pretty likable guy before that. I mean, there's not much character there yet, but
he's an asshole.
He's an asshole, but like you understand it, right? Like he's an ambitious asshole, and there's an entrepreneurial spirit that sort of occupies, I think, most people, and when they see that, they can understand why he behaves the way he does. Until the moment where his son goes deaf, and then this is seen as a weakness. This is a roadblock in his battle against all these people that he hates and that he despises. And the weakness is in his son being deaf would be a weakness that everyone would know about him, and that's just something he can't take or something. Again, I'm kind of making my own hypothesis about this because the whole movie is trying to get into the mind of Daniel Plainview, and the only things that we really know is that he's an oil man. He's an oil man that uses his cute son, who actually wasn't really his son, to get people. To manipulate people, because it's easier to manipulate people if he looks like a family man, right?
Right.
But then the question becomes, did he ever really love HW?
And that's the brilliance of it, because again, it would be very easy to make him like a consistent psychopath all the way through. But like there are these moments where like obviously he is using him as a prop. It is a cute child. It implies that he is more of a Christian man than like he is at all. Although I do love this line, what church do you go to? Well, I like them all.
I like them all.
Yeah.
Great. It's fantastic.
Sarah Palin used that one. But there's this like great, like I was drawn to the image that kind of ends the long prologue of the movie. That's almost entirely dialogue free, but you have him with the baby, and they're on the train, and the baby is just playing with his mustache. And it's just a very cute moment, and he's smiling, and he's not stopping him. And to me, it's almost like the metaphor for kind of going forward. Like, I'm not overtly caring for you, but you amuse me. I'm not going to stop you in a way. Like, it is this idea of he likes this person more than anyone else, which is a low bar. So even when he does abandon his son rather cruelly on the train, still the next thing he's like making sure that his room is okay at the boarding school that he like threw him to.
Yeah.
And that's not good. He's not a good person, but it is like there's a weird thing in place. Like it even like he couldn't like tell the kid the truth. He had to go talk to the conductor, right? And it's something that
that's incredible. Yeah.
means he couldn't, even though he can't hear him. He literally can't hear him, but he's still saying the lie to himself. It's such a like you can't pin this guy down.
He could have learned sign language.
Oh, he wouldn't. Yeah, no.
And
right?
he won't do that.
Yeah.
Like that's too big of a commitment, you know. He never does. And the idea of a handicap really
hurts the vanity of it. And that's like a major thing in like narcissism, right? That like you don't want to have a bad looking suit, and you don't want to have a weakness around you. And to have him be deaf makes you look bad in this narcissist mind.
Also, he's deaf because of him.
Yeah.
Probably not the safest place to bring your child to an oil derrick that's going to explode at any second.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I've never had children.
No.
I mean, maybe that it is, but that's kind of the whole thing with sociopaths throughout the history of film. Jake LaMotta is in his film, or at least he's presented that way. I mean, it's based on a book that Jake LaMotta wrote. It was very candid about him being touched. Citizen Kane, driven by similar things in a lot of regards, but I wouldn't call him a sociopath.
He's just so disconnected, which is like Kane's tragedy, right? Like he loves his second wife, but cannot emote on a proper level. and drives her to isolation and hate of him.
Well, he wants so in kind of ways. Well, I'm getting into this, but all great sociopaths from history. I mean, that even you brought up TV earlier. A lot of sociopaths in TV. I mean, you can make an argument for Don Draper, since we talked about him earlier. Of course. Yeah. Certainly, Tony Soprano, Walter White has to be put in that category. And I think there's a from the audience, from the viewer, when these actors, think about the actors that we just said that played these roles. We're talking Robert De Niro, Orson Welles, James Gandolfini, John Hamm, and Bryan Cranston. Okay, so these are incredible actors. You got Daniel Plainview being played by Daniel Day-Lewis in this film. They have this natural charisma, and when they possess these characters, there is it sort of sways the audience in a way that you kind of fall under the person's spell, and you trust them in a sort of like a Stockholm syndrome kind of way.
It's a cult leader.
Yes, exactly, and you want them to win. Yeah, you start rooting for them, and you start pulling for them all up until there's a body lying on the floor, right? And then it kind of snaps you back to reality, which is kind of what happens here, which I think may be the driving force of this film, and it's to get you to follow until a certain point. But it definitely, but there's this need, and why it's so interesting to watch these movies and television, or these stories, I guess I should say, is because there's this incessant need for me to want to watch them succeed, but then be good. Right. But it never comes.
Well, there's something also about Daniel Plainview, because I kept thinking about him a lot with all these kind of other big profile, not even sociopaths, but definitely con artists who kind of push the big game but can't deliver the same way that Daniel Plainview can. Look at the guy who fucked up the Fire Fest, or Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos. People just kind of keep getting more profile lately because I think we're kind of fascinated by the person who talks a lot and has nothing to say and then goes down for it. Daniel Plainview, looking at this prologue, which again, 12 minutes for a proper line of dialogue, absolutely stunning filmmaking, but you see him do the math. And so few of these wasn't Steve Jobs can't code kind of thing. He's doing the math and doing the geometry and doing all the work. He's really, really good at this only.
He's an oil man.
Yeah. And he hates everyone else a bunch, but that's the great thing that also oil is finite, which makes him it's not like he's making wind energy. He wants to get all the oil he can before the oil's gone. It is that competitive nature in him.
Yeah, I mean that drives the ending of the film, right?
Yeah,
is that he wanted to suck the entire land dry.
Yeah,
there's almost something biblical in there somewhere.
Sure,
right? The idea that you can't sell me Bandy's track because I owned everything around it and I sucked. I think he says I drink the blood of lamb every day from Bandy's tract. So there's that. So there's that.
Yeah.
There is interesting because you talk about the great con man, right? That's what they are. There's a bad con man in this film, which is his fake brother, who tries to put one over on him and almost gets him to care. This is the replacement for HW. I've lost HW. Now my brother's come back and I'm going to have this relationship with my brother. And now I can finally, with an adult, empty these things that are kind of profane from my mind, and empty out. I have another, kindred spirit that I can say, you know what? I hate all these people. I hate this. This is why I'm doing this. And then he turns out to be a fraud, which you can't con the best con man, right? He turns out to be a fraud, and that, in Daniel's mind, justifies his behavior.
Right. Well, and it's also this idea, it also goes into parts of narcissism, right? That it's the legacy. You want to still be incredible after you're dead, partly because you can't think of yourself as dead. So in some ways, HW could have been that, even though he's not treating him like a partner. He's still a child, but this can be yours, even though I intend to never die. And so it's okay, if you are a brother, if you are a Plainview, this could be something, but always in the back of the mind. I think those scenes before he knows, he always still kind of knows, and he just needs someone to talk to in a way, or at least for someone to recognize how great he is. And it's really sad. I mean, the guy's performance is really good because he's such a good con artist where he doesn't play his hand. He oh well, you should come join me. Oh, okay, I guess I will. kind of thing.
The time when they first meet each other is so great because he comes on the property and he's like, Daniel, and he immediately spies him and is, what is this? This is he knows it immediately. He's like, who are you? Or something. And then eventually finds out and he breaks through. So there's that. I also want to talk about the religion in this film, right? So like religion is a big part of this film in the sense that, the main character is definitely not religious. He goes to a town which is religious, promises to help put money in the church as part of the deal for him to help build the oil, for them to allow him to build the oil derrick there. And the antagonist of the film is Paul Dano, who is the town preacher. And this is old time religion stuff, old time American hellfire and brimstone stuff. It's great. Oh God, I love these scenes in the church. They're so good.
That shot of him coming out of the church, just shaking his hands.
I know. Out devil. Oh God, it's so good. Paul Dano, underrated. I like him a lot. So you have that, and then at the end of the film, it's a crock. He's his own con man, right?
Right.
So there are two different sides of the con man. They're like two different sides, and you have Eli say that God is fake in order to get money. And the last line in the movie is "I'm finished," which echoes the Jesus's last words. It is accomplished, or it is finished. That's okay. Those are the two, depending on which book you're reading in the Bible. So I need someone with a superior mind, Austin, to point out this allegory in here somewhere, right? Like what is this?
Well, it's not me who's going to solve this one today. Sorry to say. But something about like that character that kind of clicked for me in this viewing that I feel like I really got about him, because I always thought it was weird that Paul Dano plays the twin brother as well. I never really kind of got that. It sits up on a confusing note, although there's a provider really great.
Because it never refers to them as twins.
Yeah,
you think you're dealing with the same person. Yeah.
And there's a great acting moment from Daniel Day-Lewis when he meets Eli. And he almost bows down a little bit, going like, "Are you fucking with me right now?"
yeah.
So we already meet. It's a great little moment, but I think, although it was an accident. He's supposed to have someone else, and they realize this is how Paul Dano do both.
Yeah.
But I like it so much because it introduces this idea of duplicity that Eli definitely has. If he says one thing, means something else. It's always kind of a lie on a lie. Whereas Daniel Plainview kind of isn't a liar. He's just he is exactly who he is. He's not hiding how awful he is. And that's kind of amazing. I think it's partly why
he knows it immediately.
Yeah.
Daniel Plainview knows from the very beginning that Eli is full of shit.
Yeah.
Even when he asked him to talk about what the church service was, because Eli has been able to con the whole town. He's touched by God. He's gifted. Right. And he walks out and said, "What do you think of it?" And he says, "I think it was one goddamn hell of a show."
Exactly.
It's like you're not getting this one over on me. You can fool the rest of them. You can even humiliate me, which the Abandon My Child scene, which won him the Oscar.
And they're using kind of the same language in a way, right? The Paul Dano is providing this is what can lead to salvation. It's going to lead to this, and Daniel Plainview is saying, you're going to get this money for this. Daniel Plainview is not acknowledging where you could be financially in 10 years where you're kind of fucked. But he's being more honest about he's not lying about the economy. He's just not providing you with anything you need to properly know. He's not your advisor. He's the person selling you, and he's making a transaction. Whereas Eli is giving you a different kind of headspace, which is the duplicity versus Daniel Plainview is saying who he is. It's a bad person. Believe him.
Well, they're heads and tails on the same coin because they both spin.
Yeah.
It's still a quarter, right? The whole idea of having control over the people is really what's at stake between the two.
Yeah.
Right? One the the earthly side of it, the economy, which is Daniel Plainview, and the other one the heavenly part of it, the spiritual part of it, which is Eli. And both of them want to be dad to the town. It's who can one up the other in that regard. Who can take that position from the other one. It's almost like divorced parents competing for the affection of the children. And they both like the power of it. Like, you know, you have Daniel Plainview in what seems like, you know, a good thing when he stops the dad from disciplining the child, but that wasn't for the child. It's so that man knows where the power lies, right? You don't eat without me.
Right.
And, Eli Cash, I'm thinking Royal Tenenbaums from last week. When Eli tells him, you know, I should be the one to bless the well, he wants them to know the gift is actually from him. Not even from God. It's right. About him, right? So they both. It's sort of a power struggle between the two, and you know, Daniel Day-Lewis gets a lot of credit in this movie, and deservedly so. I think Daniel Plainview is top 5 character ever, but there's my hyperbole. I'm gonna get it in all episodes, especially last episode.
Yeah.
But Paul Dano as Eli Sunday really is also driving that, right? Because you have to have him meet his match.
Was the one thing he can't beat. Like, you get other people trying to outbid or not going in the deal or have the trains fuck with him, and he can always beat that. That is on the plane he knows so well. Because again, he's not Steve Jobs who can't code. He knows all the math, he knows all the things, he knows everything about oil, but he can't beat the faith or even the bad faith of a town. And that's the one thing he can't do. So like throughout these years, it gets to him, which is why the ending is so powerful, because he has completely beaten him. He has won against Eli. He's still going to beat the shit out of him.
Well, because Eli, so let's talk about that right? So like the big, I think the thing that holds people back for this film, I honestly, and I said this when the movie came out, if the ending wasn't the ending, it would have won Best Picture.
Interesting.
I honestly think it would have. I think that the ending really confused people, and rightly so. It confused me. I had to think about it. I'm not saying it's not a pretentious thing. I was confused by the ending. Like, why? Why do we go here at the end? Why do we decide that this was the stopping point? I think it was because it was the end of their struggle. Like that was the basis of the film. It was the struggle between these two men, and in the end, Eli is beaten.
Yeah,
and then Eli says that God isn't real and that he's fake in order to get money. Well, the money is what he always had, so he actually ends up being daddy, so he wins. And then 2, so all these years and all this competition, and you were a phony this whole time. Like, I always knew it.
Yeah.
I always knew it, but I thought you'd take it to the grave, and you didn't. You fucker. You put me through this. We had our battle, and you're not even real.
Right.
You're not even worthy to be in this room with me right now. Right. You're so stupid. Your brother was way smarter. You are an idiot. You're just a stupid child, moron, idiot, liar, fraud, con man. And the way Daniel feels about humanity, this man now represents that.
Right.
And he striking Daniel down, or Eli down, killing him, it was therapy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's similar how he responded with his fake brother. Like, once he's confirmed his bad faith, he's going to get out on it. And also the fact that, like, he's had this power struggle, and he's the one who actually was able to push against him, and he beat him, and it's all over now. You're nothing to me. Like, there's no more pushback between you and I. He is now untouchable. He has all of his riches. He has all the oil and all the land. He has won his finite goal in the area. He has an empty bowling alley that he doesn't bowl in, I'm sure.
I can't imagine him bowling very often.
There's toys to him, right?
Well, that's a great job by Paul Thomas Anderson, sort of showing you wonderfully demonstrating the sort of opulence that he has, but also in that opulence there's an inherent emptiness and sadness in it, because it's not for anyone other than himself. He has a bowling alley just to have one. It's just to say, yeah, I live in a house with a damn bowling alley in it.
He doesn't have guests.
No, of course not.
He hates people.
He hates people.
Yeah.
And it's a mess. He's shooting a gun off in his house. He doesn't care. And this is where the book and I haven't read Oil, but this is where the book, I've been told, where they really diverge. Like this section, I think, in the 1920s 20s or something
Yeah.
like that. That chapter. But yeah, I mean, it's excellent. Looking back on it now, I love the ending. Like I love one thing that they bring up, because they talk about Paul Sunday. They talk about, the other brother, that Paul Dano played, and talked about how that money that he gave him, that he sold the town out for, is now producing. He bought a well. He's now producing. He's an oil man.
Yeah.
He's making a lot of money now.
Yeah.
He says that he calls it modest, but it's just like 3 wells producing it like $20,000 a week.
That scene is so good between the two of them, because it is you see the eagerness in Daniel Plainview of like, oh, there's a new lead, but also there is a battle of smarts going on. He tries to pretend to do small talk. Okay, so where are you from? Sit down. I'm not going to tell you where I'm from. That's what I'm trying to sell to you.
Yeah.
Like, it is this kind of great thing of like, he has the money. He can spend the money to buy this information, but he enjoys the capture of it more.
Syrian Hines plays the audience basically in the background, watching this negotiation take place. It's so fantastic.
It's chilling, and that's like, and the movie is filmed. I mean, it won best cinematography for a reason, because it's like one of the best looking
and
movies.
it beat Atonement that year, which incredibly shot movie.
Oh yeah, but man, like, you just like, when you have this with the what's his name, Bruce Greenwood? No, that's the actor. The score, it is so eerie sometimes and so upsetting to kind of see this vast land. Only that part of the land is the oil drills.
Totally inspired by Kubrick. Come on.
Oh yeah,
The intrusive score, the opening wide, like that is it. With no dialogue for the first 12 minutes. That's a Kubrick
it was
thing.
funny because like so many of Anderson's first films were all about like his Altman homage, because he loved Robert Altman so much. And this is him branching out, because the Master isn't Altman. Phantom Thread definitely isn't Altman. It's the movie is so utterly captivating. Yeah,
and Paul Thomas Anderson, if the podcast had gone longer, wasn't going to be far away from being one of the 5 we did. I considered him back when we did the Spielberg 5. Because he was like
a coin flip.
It was a coin. It was a coin flip tournament.
Yes,
it was James Cameron, Wes Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Spielberg.
Yeah,
and then Spielberg won, and we both went.
Well, yeah, of
course. So, we did a film podcast. Spielberg's good. We got to get Poppy.
Yeah,
at some point. But I do think that There Will Be Blood is sort of like of that era of 2000 to 2010. Again, I'm going to inject the hyperbole in there because it's the final one. It's the final podcast, so I got to. It's the best movie of that decade to me, and there are some great, some great movies in that period. The first one, I a huge Fellowship of the Ring fan, and we covered that, of course, on this podcast. So that one's nipping at his heels. There's some so many great films in that decade. It's a good decade. But I think There Will Be Blood is the one I would throw in the time capsule.
Yeah. It's incredible.
How's it rank for you as far as that's concerned?
It's only gone up for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it when it came out. I love No Country a bit more, but the more I keep watching this, the more I just kind of appreciate how utterly complex the characterization is. Kind of what we keep talking about here. With a backdrop of one of the best filmed movies. Like, it is stunningly gorgeous.
It's gotten almost a bigger appreciation now.
Yeah, I mean, it's so quotable. It's so iconic now in many ways. It is
the milkshake monologue.
The milkshake monologue. I mean, like, it's not even like a dialogue heavy movie, and yet I feel like half of his quotes are quotable now. Big fan.
Is that it?
That's it. So
is that the final movie?
That's the final movie of Let's Take 5. We'll be back on Wednesday for the very, very last episode of the show, the Let's Take 5 wrap-up. Until then, obviously, binge all the previous episodes. We're gonna reference all of them.
All those movies.
Yeah, there's gonna be it's all gonna tie together at the end. Promise. You can find all those episodes over at theartofmore.com. Leave us a review. Why not? Follow us on Twitter at the Immortals Pod, where you'll see information about all the shows at the Art Immortal, including the Immortals and Ad Absurdum, and any shows that'll come out in the future. But yeah, come back on Wednesday. Anything to plug, Eric?
You know, there's a Chrono Trigger video coming
I
at
hear
some
this.
point. You know, it'll be there. It was never destined to beat the show. Unfortunately,
I talked to your brother last week. We're just talking like Game of Thrones on the phone, and he goes, "I'm so sorry, man. Didn't finish Chrono Trigger in time for the podcast ending." I go, "We're delayed a week. You can do it." He goes, Not gonna happen."
Yeah, no.
His work's insane right
There's
now.
it's true. There's only like 2 hours worth of work left.
Okay.
You know, it's almost done. So it'll be on constant version at some point. Of course, you can always look me up on there. You can message me on there. I still monitor the comments that people write on them, which are mostly positive.
Good.
Shout out to the 3-star review we got on iTunes as well. We don't get that many reviews on iTunes.
I never check it.
I just saw we had a 3-star review, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
You know,
We have one episode to get better.
well, it's like a bunch of 5 stars and a 3-star, and it's like, well, I appreciate the nuance of the review.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Someone listened and went,
Pros and cons.
yeah,
Yeah.
I liked that. I
Yeah.
liked that. So shout out to that person.
Thank
if they're
you,
listening.
that person. But yeah, until next week, I'm Austin.
I'm Eric.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Are you an angry man, Henry?
About what?
Are you envious? You get envious.
I don't think so, no.
I have a competition in me. I want no one else to succeed. I hate most people. I look at people and I see nothing worth liking. I want to earn enough money I can get away from everyone.